Okay, back to our template doc part 3. Here we go. Okay, where did I drop off? So next thing I wanted to do is the greeting message. So we'll need some templates for that, and so for our generic user, it's gonna show the person a way to add themselves to the table, and for every other user is gonna show them, for regular non-admin user is gonna show them just greetings person, and for admin users is gonna show them a way to look as some other person. So, and this header should go in here. So let's start with, I can hide these things. Let's start with the templates. Header no user, header regular user, and header admin user. And as usual, what I do, I start adding some emoji. And also, I don't have the tab symbol at hand. Does it? No. How do I add a tab symbol? So I can either just search for a tab. Find it somewhere on Wikipedia, or goodness, it's usually much simpler than this. Copy, and so yeah, the tab is here between the angle brackets. Yeah. Is it though? No, it isn't. Oh goodness. It's not a tab. Anyway, it's easier to just make ourselves a tab. Character 9, copy that, and now here is our tab. So tab is character 9. Yeah. So greetings guest. Click here to start using the doc, and let me first show you a solution with a button, formula, and then we can move to something that's more valid than that. So it's gonna be a button or link to let the user add themselves. Regular user is gonna be greetings and the name, and for admin it's gonna be something like greetings user, you're currently browsing viewing as another person, and here is gonna be a link saying click here to change. So username, browsing as user, done. So that's our templates, and we add a greeting message here, And there's few things that we can do. We can either render all greetings for all flows, or we can also go volatile and only render a greeting for current flow and not render ones for other flows. There's little reason to do this premature optimization. We can just render all of them. So so let's write switch if this row equals flow no user, we're gonna render a header no user template, and into that template we're gonna render a button, but we'll set this button in a moment. So right now let's just render a blank string there. Then if is admin is not an admin, we are gonna render the regular user header regular user templates and current employee name, or actually matched employee name. And if it's not an admin, and if it's an admin, or actually if admin, we render here a format, and then we render this for every other user. So header admin user template, we matched employee name, or actually doesn't have to be employee, we can have just coda user name, and browsing as current employee name. And the link, we're gonna render the link also in a moment. Okay, so we have that. When we go into my tasks, so we can now pull in a current flow greeting, and it's big because there's space for a button right now, but already you can see that for here it says and we can change the template a bit, saying that you're an admin, you're an admin currently viewing as Jonathan. And just to make it more prominent, we can so first let's just use the maybe first name, so we can take the coda user name, split first, and the current employee name, let's make it with the hidden formula, let's make it bold. And otherwise we have again name, split first, and it's an employee name. So yeah, greetings Paul, you're an admin currently viewing as Jonathan. And for a person that doesn't have a flow, greetings guest, or we could actually use, I don't know, the current user's name. Click here to start using the doc. Okay, click here. So we need something to click, and even if we want to make a button, a hidden formula button, we cannot do this without having an actual button, an actual action column. So we need to insert here a button that says add myself. This button only makes sense for if this row if this row equals no user. So So disable this button for all rows that are not the generic row, that are not the no user row. And what the button has to do, basically just db flows add row where coda user equals to current user. So that's the only action. Add myself, adds myself. And right now it added myself twice. I shouldn't have seen this button, but just for the sake of not having multiple, not being able to click this multiple times, let's also add a condition to disable this button if this table already has a coda user like this. So, or this table coda user contains user. So if this table already contains me, the button is also going to be disabled, which is not the case here, because here the coda user column doesn't contain the whatever returns the user, the result of the user function. Okay, so now when we have that, we can render into our greeting, we can render our button, which is backed by the add myself button, add myself text. Let's not play around with the color, let's keep it white, because I'm really not willing to break the dock now and stop the recording and start the recording. But what we can do though is that we can have an image icon set to person, for instance, and no user, yeah, or plus, or add, no, that'd be user. I just remember some names. The thing with the image icon, even if you type in gibberish, it's not going to crash your dock, unlike the color, where if you mistype a letter or you start typing in double quotes and just press the first letter, it's not yet a full color name, it's gonna crash your dock and you'll have a hard time recovering that. So that's why the button formula is considered unsafe, and you need to take great caution when using it in your scenarios. So I'm gonna remove this. So okay, we have that, we have this, and we have our header, and our header should, and we are offline, I guess, because the let's reload the doc. Well, it shows here, so it's just, I guess the changes just didn't come through to this doc yet. Something is stuck. But let's imagine there's no flow for me. So now what I see this greetings guest, click here to start using the doc, and the button to add myself. And I can click that, and the row is added, and I am a user, and I see a new header now. So okay, what you may have noticed here, when I click on this, it gives me a pop-up of the formula, which is suboptimal. I don't want to click on a button and be presented with a formula. So if you are going to use the paid version of Coda or the team version and use locking, if you lock this section, well, if you enable locking on this section, you won't have this problem. A formula will not be editable when the page is locked. So it's not going to be a problem. But if you don't want that, or you cannot afford to do locking, or you don't want to have that kind of locking on the page, what you also can do, you can make a view of the DB flows, again, filter for this row equals current flow. You could actually, another thing that I sometimes do, I can add another column is me, so that it's easier to filter. And this me is basically this row equals current flow, and instead of this filter, I'm just is me, I'm filtering on is me, and everywhere I'm just filtering on is me. And yeah, you could do this even not necessarily as a formula, but just as a UI filter. So that's also something that is me. It's already dependent on the function, on the canvas formula that's obvious that it's here. So it's easy to understand where this is me coming from. This row is current flow. Yeah. So yeah, what I can do, hide the title, show the greeting, maybe disable the conditional format, disable all the decorations on this table. So no header, no grid lines, no add row button, everything, all columns are hidden. And that's, you have a bit of the extra space here. Again, if you use locking, this will collapse, this will go away. But at least now that you have it like this, you can click on a button. Well, you now see this filter thingy, but at least you don't see the formula pop up, which is, well, another another trade-off, another way of looking at things. But okay, we're not going to use either. We are instead, so we're not going to use the button here, so just using a canvas formula, current flow greeting is fine, because we're gonna replace this button with something else. And how we're gonna do that? We need a pop-up that will surface a button to add myself. Just for that, a pop-up with a button. I am wondering whether I can open this column in a big editor mode, because if we can do that, okay, something's breaking already. If we can do that, let's remove this just to be on the safer side. Okay, I added a column. I open a modal. Can I open a modal of a button by simply substituting the... No, I cannot. And it won't close. Okay, if we cannot do that, we can always open a row details, and we can set this detail view to only show the add myself button. But what I usually do, and what may be a good practice to do, is to make a view, a specific view, because you can, again, there's a trick in the community, the PSA, details, expand. So yeah, there's this trick that you can have different pop-ups, different expand row layouts, if you're calling them from different views. So you can have these set up separately per view. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set up a view add myself. I use something like this for an icon for a view. db flows, it's add myself. Now I don't add prefixes to views, because when I'm gonna open this pop-up, I don't want to see any prefixes in here. I want to see row from add myself. And since I don't want to see one of 2 or one of 6 or one of whatever, however many users are there in this view, I'm filtering this to not show anything by setting a formula false. So this way, if I try to open a view of myself, it will show me one of one, even if there's nothing in here. And basically what I'm looking for here, so I need to open a pop-up from this view. I need to capture this URL. So this is the important part of the URL. This is the ID of the view. The row ID and modal true means that open this in a modal. I'll probably record or write a separate, write a dedicated blog article about navigation, and I'll probably record a separate video about navigation. And one way to do navigation in Coda is by simply forcing Coda to open certain URLs, which will trigger things like opening pop-ups, going to certain pages, highlighting certain rows. So one way to open a pop-up for a specific view, a layout for a specific view, is to construct a URL with a view ID. And that's what we are going to do here. We need a hyperlink. We need a hyperlink to open row number 1, but from a add myself. So basically this. There's going to be a hyperlink. A URL is, again, you need to have the hashtag, the pound symbol, because that's what's gonna, everything before that is address for a page, and this is an address of an object. Row number 1, modal true, and let's click here to start, click here to start using the doc, and we need to update the template so that this text simply appears in here. Okay, click here to start using the doc. Row from add myself. Now we can edit this layout. It's an add myself layout. We hide everything that we don't need. Add myself. Can we make this button bigger? We cannot. We can hide the label. We can align in center. We can change the label to add myself to the doc. And our action, actually let's do run actions. Let's close the dialog as well. And to close the dialog, we need to navigate away to, let's see if it works. So navigate away to nothing. And green, and we could actually maybe make it bigger. Oh yeah, and hide hidden columns and comments. We don't need that. So basically, that's how the flow is gonna look. So a user opens the doc for the first time. Click here to start using the doc. Add myself to the doc. And hyperlink is not opened. We need to close this. We need to focus on something. We probably need to focus on this line. Let's try this again. Delete that. Add myself to the doc. Let's navigate. So it's a bit of a trial and error. Let's navigate to the line and see if this now closes the pop-up. It doesn't close the pop-up. So we need to probably focus on, maybe just go to the page. So that's, again, trial and error, right? I hear myself getting tired. So And this time I'm not using the hashtag, the pound symbol, because I'm not navigating to a view on a page. I'm navigating to a page itself, and it's before the pound symbol, so it needs to go. I think here I'm starting to add myself to the doc. No, it's opens. No. If ever, maybe I need to add a slash before that. So let's try with a slash. Click here to start using doc, add myself to the doc. Okay, hallelujah. Finally, it did what I wanted it to do. Just one small thing, don't show alerts, and that's something that I also want Coda to finally make configurable as default. I don't want to show alerts all the time, only for errors or never. I don't need, nobody needs to know that a row was created or a hyperlink was opened or 20 rows were updated when I was doing some behind the scenes magic when someone clicked on task, mark task is done. So now no one needs to know that. So if I'll be very happy if I could disable these pop-ups altogether or have control over what's shown in these pop-ups. Anyway, let's try once again. We don't have a flow. Click here, start using the doc, add myself to the doc. Greetings, Jonathan. Hey, awesome. So and then doc admin goes, sets a checkbox, and now I'm an admin currently viewing as Jonathan. Hooray! So what's left is to be able to change whom I'm looking as, whom I'm viewing the doc as. So I'm just gonna do pretty much the same. I make another view. It's view of view as. So it's like an admin setup. This is gonna be another layout, so I need to copy this duplicate layout, view as. This time I need to show view as employee, and that's how we're gonna view as employee. And the font, let's make it a bit bigger and pick a layout of view as. So as Jonathan, as Michael, as Virginie, and we close that, and that's how we change the view as employee. So we have this pop-up, and also we could have a button here to close this, right? Oh, and yeah, don't forget to add the filter to hide everything so that next time when you open here a pop-up, it shows one of one and not one of like 50 people, and you cannot click through these pages. So this is just a way to give a user an obstacle to not navigate away, not to look at the rows that they don't have to look at the moment. So yeah, I add myself to the doc. Someone gives me admin rights, and now I should be able to also open a pop-up now into this dialog. Let's construct this URL. So if we're an admin, make a hyperlink of this pop-up. This is gonna be a row ID. This row URL split. So it's an idiom to get the row ID or the temporary row ID for recently created rows. It's an idiom of how to get either the R1, R1, R2, R3, the row IDs. But these row IDs are not generated immediately, so they are only generated when the row is saved on the backend. So it may happen, and it's explained somewhere in the same thread. You can read it in the same thread, I think, or it's linked there, or there's the PSA, link to recently created rows by UID, not row ID. There's the universal solution of when the row ID is not present, you can get the temporary or the actual row UID, the unique ID, the 10 alphanumeric places ID by using the row's URL, because the URL will always return a URL, a valid URL at the moment when it's called. And the last part of that URL is gonna be either the row ID or the UID. So, and let's give it some label. So that's click here to change. And again, we can extract this into a template so that, do we have our other, yeah, DB templates. Click here to change, and let's add an upper right arrow and back to our formula. Open admin pop-up, template. And that's how it's gonna look. You're an admin currently viewing as Jonathan. Click here to change, and it opens a pop-up. View as employee Michael, and I'm currently viewing as Michael. Opens and look as Virginie. I'm currently looking as Virginie. If I'm not an admin, so here I started using the doc as well, I don't have this option of I have a different greeting, and I don't have this option of opening a pop-up and viewing as some other employee, or view as myself, right? So that's and I'm often using these headers for also other reasons. Let me maybe find some other doc. Let me just make a quick short jump cut. Okay, so here's another doc that I made for another client, and here I'm also, okay, so, well, obviously there's no record, no teacher record for this email, so I'm using this header to also give a user who just clicked on that, add myself, some context or some information. So if there's no record about them in the system, go right to some admin email. And another thing that I have here is the time zone. So I'm calculating in that specific doc, I was calculating time zones manually. I mean, I was, so Coda doesn't really work with time zones that well. So, and different users of this doc wanted to look at the same times in their own time zones. So I added a capability to also go and change the time zones. So if all times are now in Eastern, you have like some slots selected or something. So okay, it's not shown to me because perhaps it's not shown because yeah, I'm not a valid teacher, I'm not a valid user of this doc. But if I changed the time zone here from like Eastern to Eastern European, or to Mountain Time or Central or whatever, the doc would recalculate. That would affect the times that are displayed throughout the doc. So that's another thing that you can put in your header, or some alerts about you have this many urgent items or whatever needs to be done. I often, when I build like big dashboard, multiple pages, I often just include these headers on each page, so that wherever you are, wherever an admin is browsing, or whenever the user is, they are always alerted with alerts, and they always have, if they are an admin, they have a possibility to click change and view as another user without navigating away from the page they are looking at. So overall, building a user experience with pop-ups is a very good way to build user experience in Coda, because nothing 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 is more annoying for a user than jumping between pages and changing context of what they are looking at. So imagine I'm an employee, I want to work with my tasks. I don't, and I want to, or I'm an admin, I want to see how everyone's doing, or look how what other people are seeing, or whatever. And imagine jumping back and forth either to the DB flows to change whom I'm looking at, or some dedicated page to change whom I'm looking at. Whereas with the pop-up, if I guess if I reduce the zoom on the page, I can even see how this changes behind the scenes. So I change view as employee, and I already see that this takes effect behind the pop-up. So the pop-up is not covering as much of the page when you're in normal zoom. So yeah, more pop-ups is definitely a way to go with building docs that are enjoyable to use. So pop-ups over choose pop-ups over moving to other pages if you can, for contextual things. Okay, we have our header, and what else is done? So we have our projects, we have our tasks, and we don't have actual projects and actual tasks. So what we ultimately wanted to do, we ultimately wanted to be able to add projects and to generate tasks out of the template each time a new project is added. So let's say we have some standard list of tasks. I'll probably, to spare you some time, I'll probably do a jump count and populate the table of template tasks. Bear with me for a second. Okay, I populated this table with some template tasks. Don't read too much into these. It's just 7 tasks that are going to be created for each project, and team responsible is going to be populated for each task. Explanations, well, I didn't want to delete anything behind the scenes, so yeah, explanations. And I just realized that assign filter options is a better name than assign filter types, so let's just replace that as well. Template tasks, and now we have our tasks, and now we have our projects. Let's say we have a project, and we have my tasks. We want to have the manage projects and items section. This is going to be something like a management, a product manager's view or something. And we have a page. Let's have a page for manage projects. Of course, we want to have something like a detailed view of DB projects. Which we will set up in a moment. So we have our projects, and we want, I know that we have this new item here, but what we want to do is that every time we create a project, we want to generate tasks for it. So yeah. So if we simply so projects, manage projects, and so yeah, what I'm trying to say here. The workflow that we want to have is that whenever we create a new project, we take the template tasks and we add, so there are 7 template tasks. Whenever we create a new project, we populate the table of DB tasks with 7 tasks for that project. Sounds rather simple, right? So what normally, what a regular code builder, a regular user would do. So we would have something like a projects table. Um, the instinct here would be to, let's say we want a project called whatever, Codepedia. So someone clicks on a new item, it creates a row in a DB projects table, right? With nothing in here. And you already should see the problem here, because you should already see the problem here. Doing this allows you to create invalid items in your system. So nothing stops people from adding new item, new item, new item, and abandoning it and cluttering the table with some incomplete information. But okay, let's give them benefit of the doubt. Let's say that they will fill in the project name. So the project name is Codepedia, for instance. And what now? They need to generate tasks. And what would we do? We probably would add here on the projects table. Okay, let's clean these up. On the projects table, we would add a button that will say add missing tasks. And perhaps it's gonna do something like db template tasks formula map. So for each template task, we shall add a row to db tasks where task is gonna be current value task. Team responsible is gonna be current value default team responsible, and the project is gonna be this row, right? So this project, for each of the template tasks, we create a row in db tasks where project is this row, which is logical. So we're creating tasks for this project using the tasks and team responsibles from the template. And yeah, you have this. So the user now has to click on add missing tasks, and it added the rows here. So we have like our we have our 7 tasks for the Codepedia. And okay, of course we can click it again, but we can now make a lookup of all tasks for this project and fix the formula that it created, because it is not project contains this row, it's just project equals this row. You always have to fix that, since we're using it's not many to many, we are using 1 project per task. And we perhaps can disable if tasks is not blank, or add some extra logic to check whether all tasks were added, maybe if some were deleted or some are missing, yada yada yada. Anyway, you should see the problem at the moment. So okay, even if I unhide this, we have our tasks for our project, team responsible, assigned to, whatever. Let's make it nicer. So project name is a bigger font, assigned to. If it's, let's make it, if it's blank, then prompt to fill in the assigned to. So yeah, we have something like this. We have some lingering button in here. We can put this button in the top to make it more prominent, to add missing tasks. Whatever the problem is, it works, it's functional, I mean, but is it a great user experience? Hardly, because again, this means there's a lot of room for human error. So a person needs to click on a new item here, for instance, type in the project name, whatever, playground doc. Then they need to remember to click on add missing tasks, and only now the project is valid. The system is ready to be used, elsewhere. So what needs to be changed? We want to be able to add a project, so what ultimately needs to happen is that you should give your users a way to create already valid entries in your database. Your database is your sanctuary where all the data needs to be valid. There should not be orphaned items. I mean, it will happen eventually that you will have orphaned items, but you should strive to build for the least possible human error there. So instead of allowing people to add new items right through here, what you need to do is, okay, does it have, can we remove that new item? Again, I guess this is more of a thing for locking, so that in locking you cannot see this plus new item. I don't know if you have this here. Oh, and by the way, give your layouts good names. Don't name them layout 1, layout 2. It's a project view or something. Yeah, plus new item. I don't like it. We could hide the navigation perhaps, but again, maybe we shouldn't hide the navigation. What I would add instead, so first a button, add new project, usually making it green, blue, adding a plus sign to it, something like this, making it medium size. And now, important thing, what people working with Coda would usually do is add new row to projects and activate to show a pop-up. Again, this will basically just show a pop-up here. So show the same thing that you see here. A user will still have to complete setting up that project in that pop-up. And if they abandon that pop-up, the data will be incomplete. You will have orphaned items in your database. So what I'm doing instead, I'm creating helper tables. So it's yet another category in our doc. It's the helpers. Do we have some folder with a cog? A folder with settings? Well, no, but we can use some other icon, for instance. And I create small single-purpose tables that are responsible for doing some kind of an action. And in our case, an action is we need some temporary space, some temporary space to build a form for creating a new project upon, have a button that will, when you click that button, a project row is created. Everything that needs to be done behind the scenes is done. In our case, the tasks are generated out of the template. And that row, when it does what it needs to do, it disappears. And I call this the helper tables, and I'm using them for all kinds of things. I'll probably talk more about them when we do more things with either this starter template or with some more complicated stuff. But that's something somewhat similar to like writing a specific function to do something with something in your doc. So instead of mixing that behavior with your data in your database, you're extracting that behavior into a helper table that, okay, it's easier to show what's happening in there than explaining it like waving hands. So yeah, I'm using usually this icon, and I'm using a prefix HLP, add new project. And for the table itself, since we're gonna use a pop-up, I'm just again calling it add new project. Duplicate name, fine. Add project. Well, it can be called HLP add project or whatever. So so the rule of thumb here with the helper tables is whenever you want to make an action, you create a new row. Whenever the action is done, you delete the row. If the form is abandoned, for instance, so you open, you do something, and abandon the form, you have orphaned rows, but it's not such a big problem as having orphaned rows or incomplete rows in the database itself. You have them in a separate table. It's okay to then set up an automation to clean it up once in a day or so, to clean up abandoned rows. We can have something like properties modified on, so when a row is last modified on, and then we can run automation to just delete all rows that haven't been modified in a while. Let's maybe do that. So time-based, repeat each Monday at whatever time, run an action, add project, filter for modified on less than now minus I don't know, 1 hour, delete rows. That's how we're gonna clean up. We set this row, or we set this rule to clean up abandoned helper table rows. So it's gonna right now it doesn't clean up anything, but let's say if our rule was working as expected, it would clean up all the rows that matched the criteria. Yeah. So yeah, we want to add a project. We need to have something like a enter project name and a button. We can have something like validation message, and we need a button to click. Create project, and we can have also a button to abandon it, to so cancel is just gonna this row delete rows. That's easy. And create a project is gonna run a few actions. So first thing, it's gonna create a project in DB projects. So and we need to keep a handle to that recently created project because we are gonna create tasks for it. So we insert here is a created project. It's a lookup from table projects. So the first action is this row, modify rows. Created project is the one that we add a row to DB projects and write the result into the created project cell. So DB project add row. Project name is this row's enter project name. After we've done that, we can generate our tasks. And we can do something like created project, click add missing tasks. And that would be like logical, right, to do. But we don't want this button in here because this means that we are putting pieces of logic, we're scattering pieces of logic everywhere in the doc. So if we were doing this from the very start, if we actually went ahead with this pattern, we didn't bother about creating a helper table. It would make sense to keep this button here because it's a button that belongs basically to a project. It's on the project level. It add missing tasks to this project, right? So it belongs here. But since we're extracting that everything about this intention to create a project, everything about creating a project means extracting into a helper table. So it makes a lot of sense to keep everything about that process from start to beginning in the helper table. So we should get rid of, well, let's copy that because it's a nice formula. We get rid of this button. We don't need it in the projects on the projects level. Instead, on the helper table level, in the we may create as many buttons as we want, right? We can make lots of small buttons and then make one button that will click all the other buttons, or you can write a big formula, a big action within a single button. That's up to you. If you get confused easily with lots of code, please do break down into separate steps. It's a helper table for a reason. It's something for a builder. It's that magic thing that you pass a project to and you get your system in a consistent state out of it. Doesn't matter for interface, so it's not like these buttons are going to matter anywhere in the user facing part. So please, if you wish, you can add multiple buttons, but I'm pretty comfortable with typing everything in a single action. So now for each template tasks to the table tasks, we add not this row though, because this row is a row from a helper table, but a created project reference. We put that as a project for all our created tasks. And validation message, we basically just need one. We either it's fine or our project name is missing. And handle, we're not using that. But usually I'm also using some column needs to be designated as a display column, right? And for these things where you are actively editing the title or whatever, for helper tables, for some technical tables, I'm usually constructing these formulaically out of some data or just giving it some random names or some fixed names, the display columns. Doesn't matter for our helper table really, so the handle can be whatever. Hide it anyway. So we have enter project name. validation message, we are hiding it. We're gonna show it in the button instead. We don't need the create a project, we don't need modified on, these are hidden. The cancel button is gonna be displayed alongside the create a project button. Label, no need. Here label, no need for that. Enter project name, let's have it a, oh well, we have some validation in the layouts now, so we can also use that. Formula is and value is not blank, and error message if false. So doesn't show up in here, so apparently it's only for the forms, it's not for the not for the formula layout, or maybe I'm not doing something right. So current value is not blank. Nah, doesn't show the error message. Whatever. Let's make us some messages. Empty project name. Let's not show an error. Let's point finger up. Yeah. Enter project name. And validation create project. Let's have that. Check mark. Create. Add project. And let's make it nice and green. And now we can, in that helper table, we have our validation message. If enter project name is, let's say, trim is blank, then validation, then we have our error. Otherwise, we have our label, add project, and we're using that right here in the label. Actually, we didn't have to use this separate column. I just like to use a separate column instead of putting all that into the label here, and I'm just reading from there, and that's something that's how it looks like. So okay, enter project name. Say our, I don't know, what else is left there to add some fake things. We have the playground, we have the YouTube, we have the Codepedia. Oh yeah, and yeah, and we need to make that button invalid if something's not valid. So again, you can have normally is valid checkbox, which means enter project name is not blank, or enter project name trim is not blank, and then you disable your button if is valid equals false. So no name, enter project name, template doc, add project. Awesome. So 8 rows added, 1 row modified, and we need to, in the very end, we we created a project. We put the reference to created project into here, into the cell, to then reference in the next step. We created tasks for this project, the template dog here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And what we didn't do though is we didn't this row delete rows. So when the project is actually added, we delete the row. And what's left is that we create a new row to the add project. So yeah, finishing this button. Add project, add row, activate. And there you have it. So what else? A community page, let's say. Add new project. We have a pop-up, community page, add project. Everything's done. The project is created. All the tasks are generated. So now it's left to just assign them to people, and people will then log into my tasks and complete all the tasks that are assigned to this person, that person, etc., etc. So this is how you use a helper table to make more complicated flows and to ensure that your database is consistent, so that you don't directly add items to the database and leave them in invalid state, in incomplete state. But you use, so okay, if I now abandon this, nothing happens. There's no row to delete. There's no damage done to your database. And I can open this as many times as I wish. Again, show alert only for errors. And the same here, whenever you click on create a project, show alert only for errors, because it's obvious that you'll probably see what changed there. So a new project, test project, and you just added it. And just as an extra step, you can also make it focus on the project in the manage projects. Again, we need to do some URL magic. We need to open the window, which it means just navigate to the URL. We navigate to the view, to that detail view, to the row ID of the created row, created project URL, split by slash last part. Let's see if it works. It should work. It may not work, but so we have our pop-up, test project, and okay, and yeah, and filter these again, filter for false, so that whenever you are opening this pop-up, it doesn't tell you 1 of 10 abandoned items, it just tells you 1 of 1. You don't care about that. So enter project name, test for focusing. Yeah, there it is. We added the project, and when it was added, the focus already jumped onto the recently created project. Let's try this again. Test for focusing 2. You need to click somewhere for the field to save. Add project. Test for focusing 2 is now focused, and we are looking, and it's obvious what happened. We created a project, it's completely populated, all the tasks were created for this project. That concludes part 3. I now have to think about whether I want to add something to this template or not. If I think of something and I'm really tired already. If I think of something tomorrow, or if there's something that you wish to be added here to the starter template, please let me know either in Patreon comments or on YouTube or through whatever channel that you know that you can reach me through. So please let me know what else can be added here, and maybe there's gonna be a part 4 for all your suggestions. And for now, cheers!